Welcome back to my response to this response to me, and its seemingly endless string of weird and wonderful philosophical and religious questions. This is part 3. If you want the full context, go back and watch parts 1 and 2. If not, I'm sure you'll do just fine.
If I, in your worldview, have the preference of happiness, fulfillment, meaning, and I get that from believing in a God instead of being an atheist, then surely even in your worldview, I should believe in a God.
This should thing again. No should. Stop putting should in my mouth, such as it is. But yeah, if that's your preference, go ahead. Again, didn't you just play a clip of me saying basically that? It's clearly fine by me if you want to do that. People do that all the time. This sort of thinking of yours is very common. It's not surprising. I'm not going to sit here morally condemning it. I wouldn't do it because I wouldn't get things like happiness and fulfillment and meaning from that sort of thing, from lying to myself. If I tried it, I would just kind of sit there feeling dumb for 15 minutes and then stop again. But if you like it, if it tickles you the right way, it's like those people who say, I don't really think that the UFOs exist, but it's way more fun if I try to think they do. The I wanna believe poster. I don't really get it. It doesn't really line up with my priorities. It doesn't do anything for me, but I don't hate those people. I don't think they're immoral people. I probably won't see eye to eye with them intellectually on a lot of things, but I'll hang out with someone like that, have a beer, I don't care. And I hang out with Christians all the time. I live in a very Christian area. Conservative rural Alberta, the Texas of Canada. We got Christians, and they're fine. Salt of the earth, good people. I just disagree with some and not all things they think, on an intellectual level, not a moral one. Well, usually not a moral one.
That's the whole point of the video. And once again, if you say, well, no, you shouldn't believe in a lie.
Which I didn't, I haven't. You just keep pretending that's something I would say. I guess because you just kind of expect it, because I'm an atheist, so I'm supposed to say it or something. You are currently responding to me saying I don't care. And this is the only problem I have with people who don't care about the truth, is it gets a little old talking to them, because they also don't care what's true about the conversation you're currently having, and so they don't care to actually listen to what you say.
Well, why not? You said it yourself. There is no objective morality which says that we ought to believe in the truth. So surely I just should believe what I prefer.
You said there's no objective morality that says what we should do, so surely what I should do... You're so stuck in this mode of thinking. You keep sort of vaguely alluding to my position and then reformatting it back into your own.
And I prefer happiness, fulfillment, and satisfaction. And if I get that from a deity, then surely I should believe that. And there is no objective morality, once again in your worldview, that would state that that's wrong.
I don't care. Why would I care? You have a very high opinion of yourself if you think I care. What you choose to do with your own mind matters far, far less to me than you seem to think it does. And if I believed in objective morality, I wouldn't care either. Certainly not on a moral level. How is this a moral issue even in those terms?
Why should you believe in a truth instead of a lie?
I just told you. Now you're looking for objective morality to tell you that you have to believe true things and not false things. Look, the universe is not going to make this demand of you. Except maybe to the extent that if you believe that you're not standing over a 100-foot drop and then you walk forward, the universe is going to punish you. But that's not to say you shouldn't do it. If you're fine with living your life that way, for some reason, that's your prerogative. I just don't really understand why you're fine with it.
Truly, try this right now.
Try what again? I'm already losing interest, sorry. I forgot what we're talking about.
Try to think of a reason why somebody should believe in a truth instead of a lie.
Well, I mean, most people don't want the negative consequences that come from believing massive numbers of false things.
And then you put up on the screen, there is no negative or positive without objective morality, giant grinny face. But negative and positive are not moral terms. They're just sort of descriptions of the emotional reaction elicited by something. And now I'm starting to wonder if the issue here isn't so much disagreement as misunderstanding of the terminology. Like, is there some confusion over what the word morality even means? Which is like the normative evaluation specifically of human behavior. It doesn't apply to things like pain. It doesn't apply to things like falling off a cliff. It doesn't apply to emotions. None of that is in the category of thing that we're talking about when we say morality. But there seems to be some kind of difficulty here in grasping that. Very interesting.
So I think most people are not really happy to regularly believe things that are wrong. I think people want to be right, typically, because of the practical value of being right. It's useful to be right.
And then you put up on the screen, once again, you need objective morality to justify why practicality is good, giant grinny face. Except that, for one thing, I didn't say good, I said useful, and if for some reason I did say that it's good because it's useful, which I didn't, I obviously would not mean that in the moral sense. Good is a word with several dozen different senses. Look at this. So you pretend that I said the word good when I did not, and then you pretend that the only possible thing that it could have meant had I said that is something to do with morality, despite me explicitly and repeatedly telling you that I don't see this as a moral issue. How much more dishonest could this be? Again, your objective morality says nothing about lying being a problem, really? It's kind of atypical. Interesting specimen.
And it's potentially very harmful to be wrong, like physically, or at least socially or something. But that's their own preference. If they don't care about it, I don't care about it. And reality doesn't care either. The universe isn't going to shed a tear for every wrong thing you believe. There's no celestial thou shalt involved.
I don't know how I could make that any more clear. If you still have any confusion after this, there is no way for me to make you understand my position on this.
And I'll also say I don't think there is in Christianity either. I don't recall seeing any sort of commandment about that. I guess there is the one. Christianity says Jesus is real, and you gotta believe that thing. But other than that, it's pretty much a free-for-all, right? Like, where's the 11th commandment that says thou shalt only believe true things? I don't understand where you think the moral imperative for this is in any circumstance, religious or not.
Think about it like this. You don't think that there is a universal truth that we must believe in, that we ought believe in. That's what you basically said.
Right, there is a truth, that being reality. It's there to be found. But if you don't care about that, it's not anyone else's problem but your own. It's not a moral issue. You can have your own interests and your own priorities. It's not immoral. Not according to my subjective standard, and not according to the objective standard, because there isn't one. It's all good. If you don't care what the truth is, then you don't care. I don't claim to be the master of your mind, telling you what you must or must not do with it. I'm not interested in accusing you of thought crime because you don't like to think the way I do. Are you interested in that in reverse?
And well, we can take that position. For example, if a child makes a drawing, and well, the drawing is probably bad because it's made by a child, you should probably lie and say that it's a good drawing to give them confidence so that they draw more and they get better, and in the future they might become Picasso.
Picasso sucks. No, not objectively. That's a subjective standard again. I know that's confusing for you. And no, I don't need objective morality to judge the quality of art, if you're gonna start saying that too. And no, when I say his art sucks, I do not mean it morally sucks. God damn. I can't believe I have to specify all that. But so do you notice how everything you said there about why you should lie in that particular circumstance contained no appeals to God's morality at all? No appeals to fundamental knowledge, no appeals to the afterlife. You just basically said, I don't want this kid to feel bad. And so if my preference is not to make this kid feel bad, I'll act in accordance with that in such a way that the kid won't feel bad. You're thinking like me, because my way of thinking is the natural way. My way of thinking is skipping the maze because I just want to go right over there.
So surely the truth is only important when it has value, some utility to us, right?
In the sense of telling the truth, yeah. There are circumstances where it's going to be far more efficient to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve by not telling the truth. And this is not always just selfish, you just gave an example of that. But I would say that as a more general principle, if you behave deceptively over a prolonged period of time with many different people, under most circumstances, that's not really going to be the optimal thing. It's not going to take you where you want to go. Your reputation has a large role to play in how you experience society. You know all of this instinctively, which is why you're not looking to objective morality to tell you what to do in this situation that you just brought up. Typically, a Christian objective morality would tell you, don't lie, period. That's the objective, absolute morality straight from God. Well, if you actually apply that, you're going to end up hurting that kid's feelings. And you don't seem to want to, which is why you're prioritizing your own subjective morality and making decisions based on your inherent concern for others as a biological human animal, rather than cracking open the objective legal code and doing whatever it says regardless of the consequences. When I talk about the subjectivity of morality, I'm talking about stuff like that. I'm talking about how humans actually work, no matter how much they chatter on about morality coming from God.
And that's basically what you said.
Yep.
Or maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but basically what you said is that there is no universal, you ought to believe in the truth.
Yes, it was extremely clear and specific, yes. So it's nice that you're sort of getting it now. Now, I've realized over the course of my life that typically, in my experience, there's far more utility in believing things that are true, even if they're at times unpleasant, than in believing things that are false. This is what works for me. It's done very well for me, and so I'm strongly inclined to continue to think in that way. I'm an adult, I can take the hard truths. I made this background. It has flaws. It's the first art I did since high school. I'm well past the point of needing my feelings and confidence protected so I can turn into Picasso. And as a matter of fact, when I was making it, I went to Discord, tossed it in the chat, and said, hey people, rip this apart, because I'm going to use it as a background and I want it to be better than it is. I want your advice. And they did rip it apart. And I took a great deal of their advice, and it is much better for it. I found a great deal of utility in people telling me, I think this sucks, and here's exactly why, in excruciating detail. This is how I live my life, and it works very well. Now, this is about how I want to be treated as an adult. Doesn't mean I'm going to give brutal truth bombs and crush the spirit of every random child. That's a different issue, but as far as how I want to approach things in my own mind, I put far more value on the truth, and in fact, if I am convinced that something is a lie, trying to believe it is just going to be worthless. It's not going to happen. I don't work like that. If you have a different experience, well, that's you. I don't own you. I'm not going to whip you until you cease to be willing to believe things that aren't true. You're another man. Go be.
And if there is no universal truth that we ought to believe, then surely we should just do that which gives us utility. And once again, if I don't see that atheism gives me any utility and believing in a deity does give me utility, then surely that's what I should do, right? Even in your worldview. Even in your worldview.
No, around and around in circles, my worldview does not dictate what you should do. It also doesn't say that you should not, in some sort of weird morality. It would alleviate my headache, though, if you would get this through your head.
Think about that.
I did. That's why I'm telling you it's stupid.
But I haven't mentioned Christianity a single time in this.
So?
Nor have I mentioned the Bible.
And?
Nor have I used it as a source.
Okay.
I don't know why you're bringing it up.
Because you're a Christian doing fairly standard Christian apologetics. When you talk about objective morality from God, you're talking about the Christian God. Here's a video about your Christianity. Here's a video about your Christianity. You're actually holding a Bible in that one. Raamattu. That's Bible in Finnish. It's this particular edition. That second one came out after my first video, but come on, it's pretty obvious. You're a white Finn. You're probably not a Muslim convert because you didn't open with the thing. You already had one video talking about being a conservative Christian, and your apologetics are right out of the Christian playbook. Why would I not think you're a Christian? And I'm right, you are one. Here you are in that second video saying you're a Christian.
And take you through the philosophical journey that made me become a Christian again. And that's how I became a Christian again.
And interestingly, you say you're a Christian again, which I would guess means you were raised Christian and then you had a little lapse where you decided, I don't really care about this. And then you turned Christian again. Happens all the time. Now, interestingly, in that video, you're basically saying that the reason you're a Christian again is the same thing you're insisting over and over again should be seen as okay, while I repeatedly say it's okay and you repeatedly fail to understand that. You're like, I don't like not being a Christian. It makes me feel bad. And so regardless of whether this Christianity thing is actually true or not, I'm just going to believe it anyway because it makes me feel good, which I don't even know how you do that. If you're not convinced something's true, do you actually believe it or do you just kind of pretend? Get good feels by LARPing as a Christian. Or maybe you were LARPing as an atheist. That's probably more likely. Who knows? Whatever. Your business, not mine. But all this stuff Christians say about atheism has to be nasty and make you feel bad. It has to be all bleak and nihilistic and you're supposed to not care about anything. That's all just propaganda. You know that, right? They want to make sure that you see it only one particular way, which is obviously the most depressing possible interpretation, to basically preemptively make sure that it seems unappealing. If you just grow up atheist like I did, never having any religious ideas put in your head, that's not how you see it. You just live life like a normal person. For some people raised Christian, that can be hard to accept.
What I'm simply stating in this video is that without a deity, there is no objective morality. And once again, most people would probably rather live in a world where at least people believe in an objective morality, even if it doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, I know. For some reason that I can't fathom, people go nuts for this concept. It's apparently extremely marketable, I agree. Some of the intellectual hoops I've seen people jump through trying to justify its existence are truly spectacular, and could only really be motivated by a strong emotional commitment in the first place. I know, people want to believe in objective morality even if it's not real. People want to believe in a god even if it's not real. People want to believe they'll live forever in the afterlife even if it's not real. You don't have to convince me of that. Again, I don't see the appeal. To me, the advertising for this kind of self-delusion is lackluster at best. But clearly it's working on somebody, most effectively the people who were advertised it from age 0.
And well, that kind of requires believing in a god.
No, but now that you've repeatedly stated that you don't care at all what's true, it's kind of hard for me to motivate myself to try to convince you otherwise. What's the point in trying to talk truth with someone whose emotions override all truth? You're never going to get anywhere doing that, which does start to make me question why I'm bothering to make this video. Well, that's not really for you, it's for the audience. And I think your way of approaching things is interesting enough that the audience deserves to see it.
So truly try to think of a way, why should we believe in a truth instead of a lie? And what you'll end up at is that you will always have to do some sort of a philosophical circle.
No, you won't. What you're talking about is not specific to morality. You're talking about grounding any knowledge. If you think moral questions are matters of fact about external reality, and that they can be answered by pointing to some feature of external reality, and therefore that they actually are matters of knowledge, with objectively correct answers and objectively incorrect ones, then moral knowledge is just a subset of knowledge. There's no point talking about morality here. It's too specific. The issue is much more general. Now, essentially what you're saying is that the only way you can think you know something is to ultimately have some circular reasoning at the base. Because at some point, you're going to take something as axiomatic. You're just going to say that's true. Well, that's not circular. It would only be circular if you try to prove the axiom itself by using some other belief that you've derived from the axiom. That's the circle. Simply taking something as an axiom is not circular. Where's the circle? There's no circle. There's not even a line. There's just a single point. The axiom. If you think you can draw a circle with only one zero-dimensional point, please do go ahead. Now, let me ask you, how exactly do you think believing in God changes this? Okay, so you think there's somebody who has all knowledge. You don't have it. But so you think that there is somebody who doesn't have to take something as axiomatic, who knows everything that's true without having to make any assumptions. Okay, well, maybe that's wonderful for God's knowledge, but what about yours? How does that mean you don't have to make assumptions or have some kind of axiomatic foundation? In what way does that absolve you of just taking it for granted that A is A? Do you think you can pray to God and gain access to all of his omniscient knowledge? Okay, well then you just have to take it for granted that whatever knowledge you think you gain from praying is true and from God, and more fundamentally that God exists at all, and more fundamentally that A is A, that God is God, and not something else. Are you claiming that you don't take this as an axiom? Seriously, you seem to think that the philosophical problems of knowledge only apply to atheists. How do you think that's the case? Be clear about this. This is important. In fact, it's perhaps the most important point of this entire thing, because it's the basis of the entire distinction that you're making.
Maybe if you try to answer the question on your terms, but it is possible just to reject the terms of the question. Sometimes the correct answer really is the question is malformed.
Yes, thank you, Past Logicked. He wants to confine it to some sort of an argument that makes it circular, or what he thinks is circular, but provides no reason to think that that's the only way to do things. And to be clear on this, what we're referring to here is the part just before what he showed, where he said this.
And you can't say that you should believe in the truth because it's correct. Because, well, why is believing in something that is correct better than believing in something that is not correct? You're just changing the word of truth to correct, but you're not changing the question at all. You're not answering the question.
So supposedly, the way that I would argue that it's morally best to believe the truth is to say, that which is true is true. Therefore, you are morally obligated to believe that which is true. That's not a circular argument. It's a non sequitur. That's a different thing. Now, if the question was, why is it true? And I said, it's true because it's true, that would be circular, assuming that I actually intended that as a justification for the claim that it's true, and not just as a way to emphasize something else, colloquially. I'm pretty sure a couple times here I've said something like you just care because you care, which is of course not meant to be a justification that it is in fact true that you care. It's intended to emphasize that the reason you care is not because of some intellectual justification by which you've decided to care, but just that you simply do it anyway regardless. That's a phrase that sounds similar, but obviously has a very different meaning. But yeah, if I said it's true because it's true as a way to justify that it is in fact true, that's circular, but that's a different thing than what you said.
Sometimes the correct answer really is the question is malformed.
Okay, so the question is malformed. How?
Because it assumes that you should believe in a truth instead of a lie, as a matter of objective morality. It assumes that the accordance of your beliefs with reality is not just a factual question, but an ethical one. The question cannot be answered by someone who doesn't share these presumptions. The only way to answer it is to reject the form of the question, because to answer the question at all requires the acceptance of disputed assumptions. It's called a loaded question. It's very similar to the question, when did you stop beating your wife? If you have not beaten your wife, the only way to approach this question is to reject it as malformed, because to answer it at all on its terms is to make a claim that you believe to be false. It's to lie. You keep asking this question, why should we believe true things? Why are we morally obligated to believe true things? If I try to provide some reason why we should, that would be me saying we should, objectively, despite the fact that I believe that to be false. I would be lying if I answered your question, and you're trying to make me lie. Your question is malformed. It's a loaded question. Ask a different question.
Please explain. I think it's a pretty simple question.
No, actually. Ironically, a loaded question is classified formally as a form of complex question. Here's the Wikipedia page for complex question. So no, it's not a simple question. You can ask it with simple words in a short sentence, but that doesn't make it a simple question.
Why should we believe in a truth instead of a lie? It's not a trick question.
Amusingly, it actually is. Trick question is another term for complex question. I'm not tricked by it. That's why I'm rejecting it and telling you to ask something else. I don't accept your presuppositions. That's not going to change just because you ask it enough times and tell me it's a simple, non-trick question.
I simply do not understand what is wrong with that question.
I think that might actually be true. I think you genuinely may be doing this unintentionally. I think you sincerely may not understand the problem. That's okay, but now I've explained it to you, so you'll no longer have that excuse going forward.
And especially from the context of philosophy. Now, of course, if you don't like philosophy, if you don't want to talk about philosophy, well, I guess I can't do anything about that.
So philosophy is accepting every loaded question anyone ever asks, implicitly granting everything to your opponent unquestioningly, and I can't be talking philosophy in these videos because if I were, that would mean I would accept the format of your question. No philosopher ever questioned a question. They would have lost their philosopher's license if they did that.
But from the context of philosophy, why should we believe in a truth instead of a lie?
You're not even going to try to adjust the question to address my concerns? You're not even going to try, should we believe in a truth instead of a lie? You're just going to repeat the same thing, expecting different results.
That is a pretty, in a sense, typical philosophical question.
Among people who accept the presuppositions already, yes. If you're talking to someone who already holds the philosophical positions that are implied in the question, it's just fine. If a bunch of Muslims or Orthodox Jews are sitting around having a conversation with each other and ask, why should we not eat pork? Well, if they all already believe that they should not eat pork, then that's a question that makes sense. Now they're moving on to the why. But if you ask me, why should we not eat pork? I'll be like, what are you talking about? This is a loaded question. You're assuming that we should not eat pork, and you're asking me why we should not. But I don't believe we should not eat pork. So why are you asking the question like that? If you want to ask that kind of question without it being a loaded question, you have to first convince me to accept your presuppositions. This is basic human interaction. I don't understand where the difficulty is in understanding this.
The same kind of philosophical question as, can we even have knowledge?
No, it's in no way the same kind of question, because what you just asked there is a simple question. It contains no assumptions, let alone controversial ones. These questions fall into completely different categories. Yes, they're both questions that come up in philosophy. That doesn't mean they're of the same type. Also, by the way, if you asked a philosopher, can we even have knowledge, and you expected a simple yes or no answer, sometimes you might get it, but don't be surprised if in many cases the answer is more a questioning of the terms than an actual answer. But I would not say the question itself is malformed, just that the definition of knowledge and what it is to have it aren't always seen as being so simple.
What is right and wrong?
Okay, but see, again, when you ask, why should we do this, or why should we do that, you mean that in an objective sense. And presumably, when you say, what is right and wrong, you mean that as well in an objective sense. If you don't, then it's maybe fine as a question. You know, right and wrong are labels applied by humans to actions that they consider acceptable or unacceptable. If you're fine with an answer like that, then I don't think it's a problem. If you turn around and insist, no, I mean objectively, then that would show the question was loaded with the assumption of objective morality. It's contextual, but I don't think it's especially difficult. These are the kind of nuances of interaction that you probably navigate daily.
Like, sure, if you truly just want to avoid philosophical conversations, then I cannot do anything about that.
Apparently, I didn't breathe a word of philosophical conversation in my original video. If that's not philosophical conversation, I have no idea what you think philosophical conversation looks like. Well, actually, no, I do. We established that already. It's accepting all the assumptions in all of your loaded questions.
And well, then you're gonna live your life how will you live it?
That's gonna happen no matter what. That's another tautology.
But don't come and tell me that my philosophical question is somehow a bad question.
Don't you question my question! That's not allowed in philosophy!
Because in philosophy, it's exactly these stupid questions that are the ones that we should ask.
No, philosophy does not prioritize asking stupid, malformed, loaded questions. Where the hell have you been learning philosophy?
It's good to be correct. Well, because being correct is the truth. Well, that's once again circular logic. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Why? Why is it good to avoid circular logic? Can you show me in the Bible where it says that you're objectively morally obligated to avoid circular reasoning? Or do you want to avoid it for some other reason? Like maybe that you're trying to figure stuff out and it's unhelpful for that. Nah, you don't do things for practical reasons. That's some atheist shit.
Great point, Past Logic. Spectacular, thank you. If the only reason to ever do anything is that it is objectively morally required, how do you determine that? How do you determine, for example, that circular reasoning is objectively morally forbidden, and that you're being a bad person if you do it? Do you look to scripture? Because I don't know of any scripture that contains that commandment. If not, what do you look to? You can't appeal to it'll work better, because the entire point is that's not a valid approach for any decision making, and it doesn't establish any objective moral obligation.
Huh? I mean, how do you bring up the Bible again?
Well, I think I just pretty clearly explained that. The question is, how the hell are you establishing circular reasoning is an objective moral fault? What do you do if you don't turn to scripture? And of course I bring up the Bible because you're a Christian. That's your scripture. What do you want me to bring up? The Vedas?
This video has nothing to do with the Bible.
I know, it has to do with Christian objective morality, which apparently dictates that circular reasoning is objectively immoral. So where does it dictate it? You're telling me that to avoid circular reasoning, I have to believe it's objectively immoral, and the only way I can believe it's objectively immoral is to believe in God, because apparently I'm supposed to really want to find some reason to think that I'm not supposed to do it, which kind of implies I already want to not do it, so why wouldn't I just not do it? But again with the W maze, finding the longest, most convoluted route to do the thing you could have just done anyway. So my question is, how does believing in God teach you that circular reasoning is objectively immoral? Where does that idea come from? Do you just make it up? Do you just already want to not reason circularly, and so you just make that the thing that's objectively immoral, and then you tack on the God to pretend you have some backup or something? Does this admonition come from within you? And if not, where does it come from? Christian moral teachings are supposed to come from the Bible, but this isn't in there. So where else are you getting it? If it's not the Bible, fine. I agree it's probably not. But that's a problem for you. That's a big old question you have to answer now. Telling me, no, it's not the Bible, this has nothing to do with the Bible, isn't a way to solve the problem, it's a way to gape it wide open.
Also, yes, I'm trying to avoid circular logic because I'm trying to be logically consistent.
Okay, from where have you got the idea that being logically consistent is objectively morally obligatory? You ask an awful lot about my morality. I think I've been very clear. Now let's talk about yours. You've posited a solution to the problem of not caring about whether anything is true or false, logically consistent, circular. You claim that believing in God is the solution to this problem you think is there. So explain to me exactly how it is. It should be easy. This is a solved problem.
I'm actually philosophically trying to think about the world that we exist in and what are the beliefs that we should hold.
I agree, you're very likely trying.
Now, once again, if you have a good answer to the questions that I've represented in the video, please give them to me without any circular logic.
I have answered all of your questions in excruciating detail. It's been well over 1 hour at this point, definitely. Are we approaching 2 yet? I don't know. We'll find out in the edit. But I had questions too, like the one about where you actually get your moral ideas, such as that circular reasoning is a moral evil and logical inconsistency is a moral evil. You say it's not the Bible. Okay. All right. That's not an answer to what it is.
So far, you have not answered the question to why someone ought believe in the truth instead of lie.
I have answered the question. I have told you it's a loaded question and I've rejected it. That's the answer. That's the only way I can answer that question without lying. It's the only valid answer to a loaded question. There's nothing I can do about that. You chose to ask a loaded question. You caused me to have to answer that way. It's not my problem. It's your choice.
You've simply stated that you don't care, or you've stated that practical reasons.
I was exceptionally clear in the original video, and I'm exceptionally clear now. I'm not going to repeat everything I've said for you. If that's all you heard, then you clearly do not want to listen. You don't care to understand what I truly said, because you don't care about the truth, as you said.
But then we ask, well, why should we care about practical reasons?
Which I answered in the original video, and you've already responded to it. My answer was basically, it's not a should issue. The question is, why do we care? We don't care because we feel like we should care. We care because we simply care. We can't do otherwise, because to do otherwise would be to be otherwise. And we're not otherwise. And if you're going to try to say that's circular logic or something, look up what circular logic is.
Like, oh, you might die if you walk off a cliff. Like, that's absolutely true, but why care if you die walking off a cliff?
I'm getting deja vu here. I would stop, but for every bit of repetition in this video, there's something actually kind of interesting to talk about. That's what keeps me pushing through the same points over and over again.
That is a philosophical question.
I agree it's a philosophical question, but it's a question that contains an implicit assumption about the facts of the world that I don't agree with. And that assumption is, you won't care until you've intellectually determined some reason why you should. And if you think that's not the case, if you think you will care before you have some intellectual reason to care, then what is this intellectual reason to care even doing? What's its function? Why do you think it needs to exist? Its function was already fulfilled prior to its existence. It's redundant at best. Why are you so desperate to jam it in a gap that has no room for it? Well, because you care about this whether you have any intellectual reason to or not, I suppose. You're going looking for a reason to care because you already care if it's there, which you would think you would take as an indication that you don't actually need it, but I guess somehow you haven't noticed.
Now, of course you can say, oh, the answer is obvious and self-evident.
You just responded to me saying the question is malformed. Why would I say the answer to a malformed question is obvious and self-evident? Does your objective moral system have no requirement that you pay attention?
But, I mean, is that truly a good answer? Like, philosophically speaking?
Well, it doesn't address any relevant point at all. That's why I didn't say it. This isn't my answer. I've never said anything like it. This is your answer that you made up and pretended I said. I guess you can have whatever opinion of it you want.
Now, once again, if you don't like philosophy, if you don't want to engage in philosophical conversations, then that's totally fine.
It's just unbelievable, man.
But don't act like you're here debunking philosophical questions and, oh yes, haha, look at these stupid theists asking questions.
Oh, that's my problem, is it? I'm the one who's upset about people asking questions, when you've just insisted repeatedly that if I ask questions about your questions, my side of the conversation isn't allowed to be counted as philosophical anymore? Who's really upset about people asking questions, huh?
I'm just asking questions.
Go ahead, ask questions. You're not dumb because you're asking questions. There are many reasons, but that's not one of them.
If you think that's a bad thing or there's a problem in that, then I guess I better not ask questions about religion.
Did you plan to?
So how do we escape this circle?
I don't know, I'm starting to feel like we might never. I don't think we're talking about the same circle, though.
Got him! Damn, Past Logic, you rock. Oh, it's so fun tag teaming this guy with myself. And I agree with you on the circle, buddy. I feel for you back there. It was an annoying circle to be stuck in then, and it's a bigger and more annoying circle now.
What is the way that we can have a foundation that is unshakable?
Couldn't care less.
Yeah, an unshakable foundation. That's some absolute certainty stuff. I don't care. Hey, Veikko, is believing there can be no absolutely certain knowledge allowable as a philosophical idea? Or do I have to change that if I want to adhere to the code of philosophy? Well, apparently so, because you put lol grinny face on the screen. Please tell me what I must think to adhere to the philosophy and not get lolled at, sir?
How can we stop this meaningless life and this nihilistic view that there is no meaning, there is no nothing, there is no truth, no right, no wrong, no lies, no reason to do anything? How do we escape it?
So just to get this straight, when someone says, I'm an atheist, you think they're actually telling you all this stuff?
No.
Okay, well that's good at least. If I'm wrong about that, I'm happy to be corrected. It just really seemed like that's what you were saying happens when you're an atheist.
When somebody says that they're an atheist, that makes me believe that they don't believe in a God.
Very good. If I use the word good, are you going to get confused and think I'm talking about moral good again? I'm not. Different sense.
I'm not assuming that they hold every single belief that I just stated, that the world is nihilistic, meaning there is no meaning. It doesn't mean that I believe that they believe there is no objective morality.
Okay, good. So at least you recognize that you can be an atheist and not hold all these weird positions you said at the same time. So the situation isn't as dire as I thought it was. That's good at least. I'll take the positives where I can find them.
But those are the logical conclusions of atheism. If you truly go through it, those are the logical conclusions of atheism.
Okay, I strongly disagree. I don't think atheism has any such implications. I don't think the non-existence of God has any such implications. I have heard many atheists try to justify why it would, and in my opinion, they've all failed horribly. If you want to take a stab at telling me how exactly these are necessary logical implications of the non-existence of God, please go ahead. You haven't done that yet.
Up until this point in the video, I've been talking about my own views of morality, but when someone tells you they're an atheist, you don't know if they have my view on this or not. Many do not. Objective morality is compatible with atheism, and those atheists are out there in fairly significant numbers.
Oh well, please explain to me how you get objective morality in an atheistic worldview.
All right, well, you have a reality, and among the different categories of facts about that reality are moral facts. As much as reality has physical facts, it has moral ones too. Maybe the moral facts even are a type of physical fact. There's an atheist debate guy here on YouTube called T-Jump who thinks that morality is an undiscovered law of physics, essentially a physical field of some sort. In whatever way these facts are facts, they're facts. And you can speak about these facts in objective terms, and assuming that you're representing them accurately, you're correct. There you go, objective morality. If you're going to ask, what does this look like exactly, that's not for me to answer. I'm not one of these people. I don't know what it looks like exactly with the God either. I don't think that makes any more sense. It's all just a bunch of crap to me. But whether theistic or atheistic, that's how it works. That's the baseline of what it means for something to be objectively true. Everything else is just kind of window dressing. You think they're wrong, sure, fine. I think you're both wrong. That doesn't mean you can't hold the position within your worldview or that your worldview is internally inconsistent if you do. That's not a consequence of merely being wrong. What you're claiming is that it's actually logically impossible for moral facts to be a category of facts in a world without a God, but that it's logically possible in a world with one. You haven't justified this. You've just insisted that it's the case. You've given no argument. To me, there doesn't seem to be any incompatibility, so if you want me to change my mind, you're going to have to convince me that there is one, with actual reasons. You know, philosophical conversation.
Like, please explain to me.
I just did.
I can explain to you why I believe that with a God, there can be objective morality.
Sure, great, but that's not the issue. Explain to me why you think without one there can't be. That's the relevant point.
Once again, if God is all powerful, that by definition includes the power to define morality.
I don't care. We can talk about the powers of your God some other time in some context where it's relevant. The topic is why it's logically impossible for certain states of reality to exist in a world without a God.
So it makes logical sense to believe that there is an objective morality if there is a God.
Well, no, it doesn't. Just because he could do it doesn't mean he would, and it certainly doesn't mean he did. How do you think that follows? This is identical in form to saying, surely if God is all-powerful, he could conjure a ghost behind you, so it makes logical sense to believe that there's a ghost behind you. Wait, why did you leap from it being possible to it being true? There's a gap there you need to bridge first.
Now, how do you get to objective morality in an atheistic worldview?
How do you get to it? Well, the same way you get to it in any other worldview. You believe in the existence of moral facts. What prompts you to believe in that and what exactly that means to you could be any number of things. A large aspect of this video of yours was that there's no problem at all in simply believing whatever you feel like for no reason, even if you think it's false, which, although I question how possible that really is, you seem to think it's doable, so there's an option. An atheist decides, I like objective morality, I want that to be true, and then they just believe it. Isn't that basically what you did? I don't really see how you could object. Other options would be, as I mentioned, T-Jump's physical morality, the accordance with nature of cynicism, the pleasure principle of hedonism, the scientific morality of Sam Harris, Plato's forms, various consequentialisms that talk about some objective standard of desirability, virtue ethics, natural law, the categorical imperative of Immanuel Kant, which, despite being made up by a theist, is not derived itself from the existence of God, and this is why it can be adopted by atheists like, for example, Jürgen Habermas. It goes on, and you shouldn't have a problem thinking of examples of this, because you have an entire video ranking ethical and moral frameworks.
Please tell me.
That's the only answer there is. I don't know what more you want me to say. That's how you get to the point of believing in objective morality. You get there by becoming convinced that it's true. Are you asking something more like, what does it mean for morality to be objective in an atheistic world? Well, it's probably something a bit different from what you mean, I'll give you that. But that's not the same as meaning nothing.
Now, the meaningless life, believing there's some objective meaning to life or even some spiritual meaning to life or whatever, again, is entirely compatible with atheism. Personally, I don't think the meaning of life is some objective fact handed down from the universe, but I don't believe life is meaningless.
You said it yourself.
Sure did, and I'd do it again. Past me's knocking them out of the park left and right.
You don't think that the meaning of life is some objective thing handed down, meaning that there is no objective meaning to life?
Yes, I keep telling you. I'm not one of the objective meaning, objective morality people. I'm just telling you that there are people who are, and it's not logically impossible to have a coherent worldview with these two features. But they're not me. Why are you saying that like it's a gotcha? I have not made that unclear. I'm not trying to hide my cards under my vest. I'm trying as hard as I can to show them to you. And you're looking around everywhere but there.
You basically agree that in an atheistic worldview, there is no objective meaning to life.
No, I think that in the real world, there's no objective meaning to life, but in an atheistic worldview, including a consistent one, there can be. It's just not mine. I don't think worldviews other than mine are logically impossible just because I don't hold them. What kind of arrogance are you trying to ascribe to me? Like if an atheist Buddhist comes to me and says, I believe in karma and that's objective morality, I'll be like, okay, well that's a pretty consistent seeming atheistic worldview that includes objective morality. I'm not going to say, well, I'm not a Buddhist, so that's logically incoherent. How does it follow that everything I disagree with must be logically inconsistent?
Now, if you want to say that even in an atheistic worldview, there is an objective meaning to life.
Well, in some atheistic worldview there is. You just said some people believe these things at the same time. That just because someone tells you they're an atheist, that doesn't mean you assume they don't believe in objective morality or objective meaning. You understand that some atheists will believe that, so therefore in some atheist worldview, there's going to be objective morality or objective meaning or objective other squishy human things. Whether you think it makes sense or not. There's no one monolithic atheist worldview. As you said, when someone tells you they're an atheist, all you know is that person doesn't believe in a god. Anything else is an assumption. You may have a lucky guess based on statistics or something, but that's the best you can do without some sort of further information. Something else they've said.
Now, if you want to say that even in an atheistic worldview, there is an objective meaning to life, please give me the explanation and the actual evidence for this, because I cannot think of one.
Okay, well, I just mentioned Buddhism as one example. That was in the context of karma being objective morality, but it's also an objective meaning of life, according to them. There's an atheistic worldview that has an objective meaning of life in it. Does this satisfy you that this can happen? There are plenty of other examples. Take any of these ideas that talk about the greatest good or the highest good, where the greatest good or the highest good is not identified as God or God's morality, and typically they'll see following or striving for the highest good as the point of life. Some of the objective morality things I mentioned earlier would consider following their highest goods as the purpose of life. I do think, though, that largely these ideas that you need some sort of objective meaning or purpose to your life stem from religious thinking in the first place, even indirectly through sort of cultural osmosis. I didn't grow up like that, so I don't really get why people care about this. You're alive, just go do. Why is everybody so freaked out about this? And that seems like a great place to stop, so thank you everybody for watching. One part left. If you're watching these after they all already came out, make sure you drink some water or something. Take care of yourself. Yeah, we're close to the end, but we're not done yet. You don't want to pass out right before the finish line. If you would, before you go, please do give the video a like and click subscribe if you haven't. And if you're thinking to yourself, I'll just like the first part or the last part. Nobody bothers with the middle parts. That's exactly true, and that's why it's extra helpful if you like the middle parts. If you like the channel, maybe consider supporting. A couple of bucks per video or per month is enormously helpful, and huge thanks to all of my supporters who already made that choice. For early access, email list.logicked.com, and I'll see you next time.